Welcome back to victoryisv.com or my YouTube channel, Victory is V. As you know, we are taking the hand that has been dealt to us and working with what we have to get what we want. No, sir. Seriously though, welcome to my life. I do not even know where to start because there is just so much going on. So, if you really want all the details, you can go ahead and check out my GoFundMe that pretty much nails why I am doing what I am doing at 11 o'clock at night on a Tuesday. They always say before you go on a journey to determine your why. So if you're interested in checking out my why, feel free to learn about my business. I am in a probate case from hell. At the end of the day, I hope that you would read my story and find ways to avoid it, okay? There is a checklist of items that you should go through and consider on whether or not you need these items in your household. I went down below and want you to go ahead and Google some key search terms, right? Estate plan, and then insert your state. All this information is state dependent, but all great information that you need to be looking into. In addition to that, I put down some more details and threw in some estate planning tips. At the end of the day, if my grandmother would have had these documents in place, I would not be 20 years later, fighting my aunt and my cousin to maintain our generational home. And might I add that for the last 20 years, no one else has submitted a penny to the maintenance of this property, to paying any of the expenses or anything along those lines. So what we are doing today is taking a big chaotic problem and breaking it down. You obviously are just coming in at the end of the 20 years. At this point, when I say I really mean my mother, have filed a partition for petition. We have filed a partition for petition, a petition for partition. One of those terms, because that's what happens when you don't have a will or a trust. So, for this particular time, I created a miro board because this is going to be a long, drawn out process. This is just one portion of it. And if you are not familiar with miro boards, it gives you the opportunity to have an unlimited amount of space just to do amazing things. And it has opportunities for it to collaborate. So I need you to understand that I have my specialty, but I know that you have your gifts, right? So if any of your gifts can be applied to this situation, please chime in and leave a comment in the box below, because teamwork makes our dream work. And there is just so much going on in this case. So we are going to take it one step at a time, starting with the basics. In particular, when you go through probate, one of the components is getting the accounting and expenses all taken care of. So what I would like to create a video on tonight for is that estate accounting formula. So for instance, all these numbers that be thrown around as I am speaking with my mom, I want her to be able to have a reference. So, yeah, I'm sharing this with the world, but tonight my audience will be my mother. Okay, so let's have a look at what I've done to kind of set us up for success so you understand kind of what's going on. I went ahead and I threw in some helpful links over here. So you will be able to see the property detail sheet, which is the actual listing on the MLS. So I filed the partition for petition, and as the result of it, they have forced us to go to market. Long story. Again, if you want to check out the details, go ahead and have a look over at the GoFundMe. Also on the Miro board, I have included so here's the property sheet where it tells you all the information. Eventually, we'll be throwing this right into an underwriting template so that we can see exactly what someone should be willing to pay for this. Again, we have insider information because we've owned the property since 1969. I've personally been involved with it since I've been 15 years old. Well, I mean, I guess it was my grandmother's house, so, I have had access to that home since I was born. Um, and if you all don't know, for a black widow with 4 children to be able to purchase a home in 1969 in the segregated Boston area, that within itself is practically a miracle. All right, so here is the listing. Also on my links, I've included the city taxes, right? So city taxes allows you to understand what you are going to pay for the property. If you don't know how to arrive to it, if you just go to Google and type in the city that you're represented in tax assessor's office, the website for that location should populate. Once in there, you want to figure out what their database is, and then you want to go ahead and insert the information so you can run a search. So let me go ahead and put in the information that I know so that the details come right up. And as you can see, my mother is listed as the property owner because we are the one that are paying the bills. And I thought it was important for us to come here because, again, this is a data point. So according to the Boston City Tax Assessor's Office, the property is only valued at $422,000. And if you go ahead and check out the links, it gives you all the information. Also, you can see the remainder of the heirs of the property. You can see the property value throughout history. I like to point out the fact that in 2002, which was the date of my grandmother's death, that this property was at $213,000. And in the last 20 years, it pretty much has doubled, according to the tax assessor's office. As you notice that you'll see a spike in the payments, and then automatically we start to see a decrease. And that's because I've actually learned some information and realized that I could contest the property value of this. So we figured it out and we went ahead and we got that number reduced. So just as we had to figure out how it was to contest the tax value of the property to be more realistic, we're going to figure out how to keep my grandmother's house. We're going to figure out how to buy our house back. Imagine that. We are going to jump, and that's what we're about to go through, right? Because there are so many different factors in here. So again, you got the listing information, you got the tax information. We also go ahead and, because this is a court case, all information is available. We have that documentation. So, not through any help of my lawyer, imagine that, I discovered how to pull up these public records. And this is how I've been able to track my lawyer and what he's been submitting because I have not had the opportunity to weigh in. And that's a whole different story for another day. So if you all have any advice on how to navigate relationships with an attorney who should be totally representing me, but obviously there's a conflict of interest and a difference in opinions on how we should be approaching things. So obviously he's the quote unquote professional, and I feel like I'm being strong armed and bullied to do what he is suggesting that we do. Although I am 100% adamant that it should be the other way. So this is why I am coming to you all. Where are all my attorneys at, y'all? Chime in. All right. Also, again, I would need you to know that I am not here just to complain. I want to make sure that you read through this checklist and that you get your house in order. You avoid going through probate at all costs because the system is not designed for anyone to benefit. It's just not. I have a checklist for you, okay? So go ahead and check that out. And with that said, let's jump on in. All right, so you have the city taxes. I also thought it was important for us to list the key players, right? So that you can kind of understand all the people that have decided that they're entitled to a portion of this property, all because my grandmother did not have a will and a trust in place that told others how she wants her assets to be distributed upon her death. She actually thought she had things in place, such as a power of attorney and a HIPAA authorization, da 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 da, insert a term there. But in actuality, we didn't have the correct documents in place. So here we are. All right, so we're going to jump on in. Let's go over what the formula exactly is. The formula is going to consist of the market value minus expenses, and then you'll end up with what is considered the profit, the estate of the profit. That number is then divided by the number of heirs, which brings us back to the key players. So, my grandmother had 4 daughters. One daughter has Down syndrome. One daughter is my mom, and she's the oldest, and she's taking on the bulk, all responsibility. Even as a caregiver prior to my grandmother's death, that was my mom's responsibility. And again, if you want the details, go check out the GoFundMe because that's where I put the story out, and there is some tea for you to be sipping on there. And then there was 2 other aunts. So my grandmother had 4 daughters. I have 3 aunts. One has Down syndrome. At the end of the day, I know that should anything happen to my mother, I will end up eventually taking on responsibility of that. So, anyways, moving on. One aunt has passed away, which obviously she didn't have a will and her house wasn't together and her documents weren't together. So this, her portion of the inheritance gets passed down to her 2 daughters. One of the daughters, thankfully, has, aligned with my grandmother's wishes and signed her rights over. Unfortunately, she just signed her rights over to her sister, which just grants one of my cousins 25% of this asset, and an aunt. So in essence, we're only fighting off 50% of the heirs, represented by an aunt and my older cousin. Did I mention that I was the baby of the family? Well, I was the baby girl. There's a baby boy cousin, but unfortunately, he passed away 10 months ago. And that's a whole interesting story there as well. It's very sad. All right, you all, let's get back to it. My apologies. Family's kind of triggering for me. Okay, so a market value. The market value is what someone is willing to pay for a property. So a lot of the reason why we are in cahoots with the heirs is because we value the property to be one particular amount, and then they are saying it's worth more. So, ways that the value of a property can be established. It can be through an appraisal. So we have one appraisal, and when our appraisal is coming in at 500,000 as is, you know what? I got all this information. So I believe in transparency. So I'm going to keep it real with you all. Let's figure this out. You know, my lawyer would tell me that I am putting myself at risk and all this other stuff, but at the end of the day, they're trying to bully us and force us out of our own property. So, what really can go wrong? What is the worst that can absolutely happen? All right, so let me go ahead and see if I can attach this appraisal. So here is one appraisal. And I'm going to do this because I wanted to move it out. All right, one appraisal came in, and this one is at $500,000 as is. So I'm going to go ahead and just note this. 500,000. And they're all as is, so let's just say as is appraisals, right? Make sense? An as is sale means that this property is going to be sold as is, meaning there are no contingencies, there are no factors that should make this deal fall through. So we have one appraisal coming in at 500,000, and then there's the Boston Commissioner appraisal, and that appraisal came in at a whopping waiting for it to open up. And this appraisal came in at $750,000. So based off of that very wide number, we were forced to go to market because that's a difference of $250,000. My 500 or the appraisal in which we received is based off of what it would take to repair the home, right? It takes into cap rate. It is not overpaying for an investment. The $750,000 appraisal, I think it's very important to note that there were questionable items in which this number came up as. But you can go ahead and look at the numbers for yourself because I'm going to figure out how to get this report attached. But what I think is important to note is that the structural integrity of the home has been questioned. And it clearly identifies that they're not an engineer. All right, so the flooring was noticeably uneven in several areas of the house. It is recommended that an engineering inspection be completed to confirm the subject is structurally sound. Let's see what else. Right now I just typed in engineer. The appraiser is not a structural engineer and offers no opinion regarding the structural integrity of the subject property. It is recommended that an engineering inspection be completed to confirm the subject is structurally sound. That is twice now. And in the statement of assumption and limiting conditions, it is duly noted that the appraiser will not be responsible for any such conditions that do exist or for any engineering or testing that might be required to discover whether such conditions exist, because the appraiser is not an expert in the field. All right, so he's clearly saying that he's questioning the structural integrity of the property. Also, I know I said I wasn't going to go through the numbers, but I thought it was important to note that the condition of the property was different among the comps, right? So there's several different factors that make it different, but yet they were all subtracted at the same unit number. Right? So there's a lot of things that just aren't making sense and make me question the value in which this has come about. Also, I have bids. Let's be very clear. I have a hard money lender, and I have the laborers and bids on people that are ready to get to work and repair this home. I am just against repairing a home and adding value, not just maintaining or keeping it afloat, purposely taking out my own funds and investing it into a property that someone else can very much well come in and take over. At this point, we've already invested, and we'll get to that, all these other expenses. So it really doesn't make sense. It was important for us to divvy out the costs or at least establish a current as is price so that we can go ahead and move forward. All right, so I've said enough about the appraisals. As you can see, this is what is currently happening. Ultimately, it's what someone is willing to pay for the property, right? So there were several offers that came in. I think there were like 5, but I don't know the offers because we've been taken out of the playing field. So going back to the key players, right? There's the attorneys. So there's an attorney for each of the 4 heirs. You have the judge who's overseeing it. The judge appointed the commissioner who's supposed to kind of be there to verify everything is acting or being justly established. But to be honest with you, I'm feeling very bullied and I'm scared. And they all feel that it is in the best interest of a 65-year-old disabled senior being placed out on the streets. I'm sorry, my apologies. They have told her to go out and secure another home at $400,000 because that's what she qualifies as far as a pre-approval. And that's a 30-year loan. My mother is 65 years old. How in the world do they think it is in the best interest for a woman of 65 years old to take out a 30-year mortgage? She will be working until she's 95. And God forbid something happen and she'd not be able to work anymore. What's going to happen? They're going to come in and take her home? Then where is she going to go to? She's cashed out of her retirement accounts to make sure that this property stays. This was where she expected to die at. This is where we have invested all of our time and assets, right? It's very sad. Sorry, you all. I'm emotional. I'm going to come back. There are 5 offers. I'm going to refrain from saying what those offers are at this point. But, I do know that 4 were extremely low. And then there's one on the higher end. And if I had to guess, I would say that it's probably dual agency. Because we'll get to it later. We'll do some underwriting so you can see what's happening and why someone should not spend more than $650 max on this property, especially given the current economy and what is happening between the supply chain, development costs, the risk of the structural integrity of the property. There are just so many factors that make me question on whether or not this is an investor or this is a newbie just trying to find their exit out of the market. Everyone's trying to get out of. Nobody wants to work for the rest of their lives. All right, so what determines what they're willing to pay? Things that determine what they're willing to pay. Deconstruct the rehab costs. What is it going to take to get this property to be able to get rented? What is the after repair value of this home, right? These are factors that are going to need to be taken into consideration when running your numbers. So I said ARV, which is the after repair value. So this is what the house would sell for after all repairs are completed. What determines what they are willing to pay? Funding, right? So whether or not this is an all cash offer or whether or not they can purchase this it's funding, right? They would, because of the condition of the property, this does not qualify for traditional funding. So your typical 25% down does not qualify for this. So that normally knocks a lot of people out of the market for this type of property because of the rehab and construction that needs to occur before even getting this property stabilized. So I'm going to say funding, um, types of funding. And obviously, when you're dealing with funding, you have to worry about the interest rates. So when the interest rates are at an all-time low, then the money is widely available. People are out there spending. As the interest rates go up, the money tightens, the reins get tightened. So you may not spend as much as you normally would because you may not have that available, right? Because you don't want to have high interest rate, right? So low interest rates means a lot of spending. High interest rates means that spending is slowed down. And that's how the government and the feds start to manipulate kind of what's going on in the market. Sure, there's a lot of other factors, and at some point, I hope to get to talk with you about these things because the economy and how we operate impact us has an impact us on us day to day. But so often we are focused on our day to day operations that we don't often think about the long term of things. So I'm kind of passionate about this stuff, and I hope that you are too. At the end of the day, this is the chaos I was born into, and I have no choice but to figure this out. So I am hoping that you stick along and you come along with the ride. Um, because we're going to make something happen. We're going to do something. All right, so these are different factors: rehab costs, after repair value, funding types, supply chain. I'm going to go ahead and say the supply chain. So, like materials, right? The cost of materials. Wood has gone has done something we've never seen before. Um, I'm also going to say the war. I'm going to say that there is a factor that plays into it as well. All right. Because, the war controls the stock market. The stock market shows what type of cash is readily available to some people, what their assets are, right? Everything is all interrelated. The question is, how does it impact you and where you are? So those are just some of the things that determine what someone is willing to pay. Appraisals and traditional purchasing methods. I think I kind of covered that up there, up at the other top, right? So what someone's willing to pay is the market value, but the appraisals are also factors. We also did note that the city tax assessor appraised it for, I think, like 400 something. So let's go ahead and take that down as a note because we are capturing all data points. All of these points truly matter. We are analyzing the data to figure out what we're setting the framework up to figure out what our options are. And at the end of the day, the numbers never lie. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that change just so I can be consistent with my numbers. So my eyes really keeps it uniform. All right, appraisals, right, and traditional purchasing methods. So again, I talked about the funding, the types of funding. If that person does not have all cash, they're going to need a hard money loan or other people's money. They might have private financing. The broker says that they showed them a bank account worth $2 million or something along those lines. Again, I don't know because they're not sharing any information with me. And when I ask questions, it seems to make people upset. All right, so let's start talking about expenses, right? Because remember, we are filling in this formula up here. So if we kind of go ahead and zoom on in, I'm going to go ahead and copy this, right? And then as we discover what the numbers are, we are going to fill in the equation. How does that sound? So let's see. Copy. I did a control C, and then I'm going to do a control V. Bingo. Right? So now we're going to say the market value. Because the listing price was $725, we're going to go ahead with that number. Okay? We clearly had a hard time identifying what the number may be. There was a court appointed warrant to push it for sale for $750. They went ahead and decided they were going to list it for $725. Okay, let's start talking about expenses. Expenses can be broken down into the types of expenses. So over here, we're going to say documentation of costs spent. So that would be our 20 years worth of paperwork. We went into our attorney's office with 4 bags of 20 years of paperwork, vendor receipts, invoices, check stubs, credit card statements, all of this information. We've also submitted accounting for it as well, and that's also been established and can be found through all the public records. You'll take note that what initially the accounting started at over $400,000 has somehow substantially been reduced down to the low 200s, and then the commissioner is even reducing that even further. So at this point, you all, this is crazy because we clearly have paperwork and receipts for a total of over 400,000, and those are just the items in which I didn't spend cash on. At some point my mom did lose her job. And interestingly, the same lawyer that is representing my aunt is the same lawyer that my mom had procured the services of to hire him to protect her position and keep her from getting terminated. When I say this is deep, y'all, I really mean this is deep. And interestingly, you'll notice that in this timeline of paperwork listed on the public records, that my aunt proceeded to file paperwork at an interestingly timeline after my mom was terminated by my current aunt's current lawyer. Whew. I think we need to get a timeline going, y'all. Man, we need to get a timeline. I'm going to put a little note over here of things I need to work on. We're going to parking lot some things. We're going to call this a timeline and a family tree. Hey, we're going to get listen, it's my life, my life, my life. All right. So I'm going to parking lot that for later. Get back over to the 20 years worth of paperwork. So that 20 years of paperwork was reduced by attorney based on his own framework of reference. All right. So my lawyer is making it very clear that the other parties have a right to contest. So since they have a right to contest, I would assume I have that same right. And what I'm saying here is that our lawyer continuously files paperwork without giving us the opportunity to review for accuracy or to agree with his approach. There have been several times in which we've stated this is the approach we would like. We understand your guidance. We understand what you are saying, but this is the approach we will take. And he will deliberately ignore everything we said and go ahead and file how he feels that he should file. So this is the reason why I bring this up. And I also not too sure how to navigate this really awkward situation because, as I mentioned, he has my 20 years worth of paperwork. I've been asking for the paperwork and he refuses to give it to us. I've also asked for a bill and he has yet to give us that. It's a very tricky situation and I feel extremely uncomfortable. So I'm really hoping this video gets some traction, gets me some help that I need, because this is crazy. And again, I want you to all to know there is no mortgage on this home. All expenses are paid. All taxes have been paid. There is no lien on this property outside the one that we put on it. Because again, we are just trying to protect our investment. And when I say we, I'm really referring to my mother. All right, so right to contest and the estate to profit and their heirs and who gets what. So again, I mentioned that there are four heirs. There are four heirs, and based off of that, everyone should be entitled to 25% of the profit. Okay. So with that said, let's go ahead and navigate over to what the commissioner has declared should be the final amount of expenses. All right, the final number came in at 212,138. So that's the new number that she's saying. So let's go with 212,100,000. So these expenses, and you know what? For a moment, I think I need to. I think we need to classify what the expenses are, because it's not only that 212. So we're going to take a moment and copy this. We're going to do a control V, and then we're going to just break down expenses. Sorry about that. I hit the microphone. Expenses are costs to maintain the property. I say all 20 years, but for some reason they declare that it should be only certain and select items. But again, I got 4 bags of paperwork that declare otherwise. So cost to maintain the property. 5% broker's fee. We can't forget that. So the commissioner has ordered a broker to list the property. So now we have a broker who's been, who started working with the commissioner as of March, and they will be getting 5% for listing the property. 5% for the agent's fee. Lawyer fees, lawyers, and lawyers are going to get hit on both sides. So they're going to have probate expenses, plus lawyers are going to come out of their individual heirs' profit as well. So I think that's very interesting. At this point, this is all I can think of, but I want to make sure that it is noted, because this 5% is based off of whatever that sales price is. So if this case we are saying that the sale price is $725, we would do 725 multiplied, so that's going to be times 0.05, because we want to know the percentage for what is 5% of 725. So if we go ahead and take out our little handy dandy calculator, I really like Excel, but I'm not sure whether or not how familiar you are with Excel, and I don't want to scare anyone. But I hope to one day share with you Excel and all the neat tricks that you can do with it. I believe data runs the world, and if you can create dashboards and relationships among data, to help gain insight, that is amazing and a skill that can never go out of style. All right, so with that said, we are here doing 725, 100,000, and we're going to do times 0.05. So the broker right off bat gets 36,250 for listing the property, for showing up 3 days and then receiving bids. That's a lot of money right there. To only be involved for what, 6-7 weeks? Psh. All right. So with that said, that 725 directly gets subtracted from right here, right? And then we need to subtract the expenses of what the court had determined to be 212. So now we do 212, comma 11, boom, right? And then that will leave us with the estate profit. And then that estate profit then gets divided by the 4 heirs because it gets split by the 25%. So with that said, let's run these numbers that we do have. I'm going to go ahead and clear this. I have 725 minus 36,250. That's going to cover the broker's fee. And then we're going to subtract the expenses that we are well aware of, or at least that we definitely know for sure that we can get. We obviously are looking for ways to get back up to our 400 number, and figure out how to get those funds back into it. Our lawyer filed our paperwork and our accounting without having us review it. So there are a lot of concerns there. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract that. And that leaves a total for 476,750. So this becomes our number right here. And then we're going to divide that by 4. Bingo. So that would mean everyone gets 119. Each heir gets 119, 187.5. And 50 cents. Interestingly, I don't know everyone's tax bracket and things along those lines. I can only assume that, they have a 30% tax. So I'm going to, because those in poverty are the highest tax, you do realize that. Or those that don't have businesses and employees are the ones that are mostly taxed. And oh Lord, don't have no children or dependents. And that's a whole different ball game. Again, if you go back to my list, one of the items on my checklist is to check out wealth preservation strategies and wealth preservation strategies and tax reduction strategies. These are things that are involved in getting your house in order. Yes, you need your budget and your planning and all these documents, but it does not stop there. Those are just the initial and beginning steps to getting there. And if you stick with us at Victory is V, we going to do this together. All right, so that means each heir gets this amount, and if we go ahead and save 30%, oh, my number, it's gone. All right, I think I can paste it because I think I still have it. Bingo, right? And if we multiply that by 30%, right off the bat, 36,000 goes to Uncle Sam. So taxes, capital gains taxes at 30%. Because if this is your first time getting a big windfall and you don't know how to operate, listen, it's going to be an issue. So now we take that 119 and we subtract it. So let's see if I can do that. Bingo, yep, that works. So they might walk home with 83 grand. So, what can 83 grand buy you? Maybe a new car. Maybe. All right, so at this price, they are entitled to $83,000 a piece after taxes. And that would be my best assumption. All right, I think we covered a lot. I don't know how long we have been in session. Okay, we've been in session for about 45 minutes, so this isn't bad. Maybe we will continue to put this item together and try to make sense out of it. Maybe tomorrow I'll work on the timeline. I don't know, you all. I'm still trying to figure all this out, so I don't want to overcommit myself to things that I don't um that I can't execute. But I do want to say that we will be having an estate planning workshop coming up in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. Again, I left you my checklist and some notes. Please go out and get your estate planning done. Consider getting a will and having a trust established and making sure that you update those documents too, okay? It's not a one and done type of deal. These are living and breathing documents that are going to be a part of your household operations. So, plan accordingly. And remember, tomorrow is not promised, okay? Um, the Gallup survey has said that over 50% of U.S. adult Americans do not have these documents in place. And their number one reason, or the primary reason on why they don't have this document in place, is because they didn't have the time. So I just want to remind you that tomorrow is not promised and that we should be using our present time as a gift, because that's exactly what it is. It's a present, and we should use it wisely. The Lord has granted us the tools, and the surrounded us with the people that we need to help us move forward. We are greater together, and teamwork makes our dream work. So here at Victories V, we have a spirit of collaboration over competition, right? As you can see, am sharing with you my entire life and obviously value transparency. Um, and if I can be of help to you in any way, fashion, or form, please go ahead and let me know. So if you're not familiar with the Miro, you should have editing abilities, and you have the ability to make comments and mentions and things along those lines. So, come on in and jump on in and let's make things happen. You can leave notes over here. We can add different items, add different blocks. We can add templates. So play around with it. Feel free to go ahead and create an account. If you want to play in a different create your own mural board to play. But if you are here to contribute and add value to this, feel free to jump right in, okay? All right, you all. I don't know when I will be back, but I'm excited to be with you and to move forward on this journey together. So if you need anything, drop it in the chat. And till the next time, I love you, but Jesus loves you even more. Adios. Whoooooooot.